We're going to talk a bit more about all of this with France 24's Douglas Herbert, who joins me on the set. Doug, let's start with these supposed talks with the Iran. Are they really happening, or are they just a diplomatic fig leaf, perhaps covering the fact, as critics argue, that Trump really doesn't have a plan?
Yeah. You might have seen the meme that had been making the rounds on social media recently, drew a little bit of a chuckle. It shows Donald Trump with a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist is saying to him, and Mr. Trump, these Iranians you're talking to, are they in the room with us now? Yeah, you can chuckle, and it is a serious matter, Jeannie, in the sense that there really is, for people watching this from the outside, when Donald Trump is talking about talks with the Iranian regime, it raises the question of exactly with whom is he talking? He talked about, wiping out the previous regime. There are all these different people now who he says are much more reasonable. But the Iranian regime, for its part, says there are no talks with the U.S. going on. And even the U.S. is forced to acknowledge the fact that there are no face-to-face talks between U.S. and between American and Iranian negotiators, at least not publicly acknowledged talks. Does that mean that there are not efforts and scrambles and diplomatic stops being pulled out behind the scenes to try to end this conflict? Absolutely not. There are. Pakistan has flagged its willingness and readiness to serve as a mediator. Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt have all been active on this front. Pakistan really wants to host these talks, and it is very probably likely, that there are a lot of informal backroom discussions between the foreign ministers and officials from these regional players who presumably would have some sort of more outreach, or at least an overture, a way of getting in touch with the Iranians. But as far as direct talks, that just simply isn't happening right now. Look, the usual Trump envoys for talks, Jeannie, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, the go-to people with no real, political experience to do all of his other peace missions, they are absolute non-starters with the Iranian regime. They are seen by the Iranians as being staunch advocates of Iran's biggest enemy right now, Israel. So they can't hold negotiations with Witkoff and Kushner, who had been touted, perhaps J.D. Vance, because he's been more on the record as being against forever wars, not being fully on board with this war, at least early on. So he was seen as perhaps more palatable. But so far, the Iranians have given no signs of being ready to talk. On the contrary, what they are really saying, at least the ones who are speaking, is that they have their own demands. Okay, you want talks, lift the sanctions on Iran, pay for the war reparations, and reparations for damage done by previous U.S. administrations as well, and give us sovereignty. Here's the big one. Give us, Iran, sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz.
So Trump also said, speaking of the Strait of Hormuz, that Iran has agreed to let 20 cargo ships carrying oil go through that key strait. He calls it a sign of progress. Is it really a sign of progress, or what should we read into this?
Yeah, I might invoke that meme again. This time, perhaps Donald Trump sitting with the psychiatrist saying that Iran has agreed to, allow these. That's a sign of progress. And the psychiatrist basically saying which Iranians have agreed to let these ships through. Look, Donald Trump, this is clearly spin. This is diplomatic spin. Donald Trump needs to make it look like his talks with these, quote, more reasonable people behind the scenes in the Iranian regime are somehow bearing fruit and leading the Iranians to basically allow, because of Trump's diplomatic and deal-making abilities, to allow 20 oil-carrying cargo ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz. What do we know about this? Yeah, Iran has apparently agreed to let 20 ships pass through. It did so last week as well. I think it allowed 10 ships to pass through as well. Where are these ships headed? We don't know. They might be headed to China. They might be headed somewhere else. We just don't know. Maybe Gulf nations. Is it because of Donald Trump putting pressure on them, or some concession in talks that are happening but not happening? We have absolutely no idea, Jeannie. And it's not just the fog of war, it's the fog of war, because we don't even know what we don't know here. Yeah, there are some more ships passing through, but you could flip the whole narrative around, and you could say this isn't because Donald Trump is making progress in these are they happening or not talks with the Iranians. It could also just be a sign that the Iranians are calling the shots right now in the Strait of Hormuz. I noted in the previous answer, right, that the Iranians would like sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. That's one of their emerging demands, as they see what the impact, the importance of this choke point. They probably never realized that it would have this impact on the global economy. And now that they're seeing it, they have real leverage with the Strait of Hormuz. So maybe the fact that they're able to turn on and off the spigot, so to speak, with the Strait of Hormuz. Let ships go through when they want, not let ships go through when they don't want. Maybe that's just the opposite of what Donald Trump's saying. It's a sign that the Iranians actually are, in a sense, have a little more sovereignty now than they did before and are calling the shots in one of the world's most crucial energy choke points.